Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Airtime with Jordan. I'm your host, Jordan Faso, and today we are going to be talking about just some, takeaways from the weekend, just from a few of the teams that I sort of wanted to focus on, but they're based on their performances and, the recent form that they've been in, I guess, a little bit as well. And those teams are Footscray for this weekend due to their wearing of their retro round Guernseys, Adelaide, and Carlton as well. So I'll go through those three teams and then a bit about them from the weekend, and then to follow up on the end of the podcast, we'll go with the Secret Star Society inductee for this week. So just want to make a little quick disclaimer. We've got a puppy at home over the weekend, so if you hear any little whining and stuff, I promise it's not me, it's the dog. We've welcomed little Sully to the family. So on that note, let's start with the doggies. So Footscray, are they the team to beat? I think that their recent run of form has been, pretty amazing. You can't really argue with how they've been playing, but just to touch on the context of the doggies for the last few years, I think that they've still underperformed, based on the talent that they've had on their list over the last few years. They obviously reached that grand final in 2021 against the D's, but while Bevo's been coach, I think that list has definitely underperformed. They are hard to win grand finals, but to not get to one apart from 26, to only get to one apart from the one that they won in 2016, which is now 8 years ago. I think it's probably a little underwhelming, especially the way that they won it early on in their trajectory. So I think that they've still got a few years of contention, hopefully, with this list. So I'd be ashamed to see the later years of Bont's prime be wasted. So hopefully they can get another one for their sake and their fans' sake, and not waste this sort of purple patch of talent that they've been blessed with. Like that being said, I've got to give Bevo his credit for where it's due. This year, he's made multiple moves for the betterment of the team. Maybe not so much the Caleb Daniel treatment, but I digress. I guess we have a few of the moves that Bevo's made that have sort of worked out for them this year. Well, we have obviously at the start of the season, all the hype was around Riley Sanders. He's highly rated player from Tassie in the under-18s, and they didn't at the start of the season, it was sort of like the hype was building, and then all of a sudden he was getting subbed out of games, played a couple in the VFL, and I think that his treatment of him didn't may not have been the best optics at the time given what was happening in the preseason, but he didn't give the minutes to him after the hype, and there's been multiple games then now this later in the year where he has stood up and shown that he definitely belongs at this level and is going to be a good player for a long time. So I guess that treatment of not just gifting him games because he was a highly touted youngster and wanted to get onto the list and get into the main team and make his imprint on the team. I think it was good by Bevo to just sort of hold the reins on him a little bit. But he's definitely been one of the points of that I'll point to that Bevo's been good at this year. And then you've got obviously the Bailey Dale treatment as well of him at the start of the year, a bit of tough love for him, making him the sub and All Australian in 2021. So you don't expect him 3 years later to be a sub, but it looks good now. The tough love and treatment for Bailey Dale. He's performing pretty much exactly as he was in 2021 when he was that All-Australian, and if not better. Got his stats here. We've seen that, everything is as good, if not better. His disposals are up, his kicks are up, his handballs are up, inside 50s are up slightly, his disposal efficiency is up just. It's all marginal by one or two stats or percent, but that all sort of adds up. His rebound 50s actually are slightly down, but it's much of a muchness, I guess, but based on that season. But I think that given the fact that he did play a game as a sub and stuff, that would have pulled his stats down a little bit, which I think sort of speaks to how good he's been since that point in the year. And I don't know if he's necessarily going to make the All-Australian because the game has so many good users of the ball at the half-back position now, which is his bread and butter. But to challenge Bailey Dale in that way has definitely paid off for the team overall. I think that in addition to that, they're getting the best out of Buku Khamis down back. He's putting the trust in him to affect a defensive contest, airily and come off his man. And he's definitely shown that he's an absolute find and should 100% be in their best 22 going forward, yeah, especially with the emergence of Lobb down back, being able to play Buku Kamas as that third tall. He's probably not going to be a one-on-one beast ever, but that being able to intercept alongside Liam Jones and Lobb as well is just definitely be pretty happy if you're a Dogs fan at the moment down back. And then obviously the latest move in the last sort of 5 weeks is Lobb moving back. So I went through his stats based on just those 5 weeks alone and just looked at his defensive profile everything, like his whole game, and compared it to the rest of the competition over the course of the year. So his 5 weeks versus every other player's total competition. I just want to sort of see what players his statistical profile would be most similar to, and it came back pretty glowing for Rory. We've got Jakey Lever, Jake Kolajasny, Josh Battle, Alir, Jeremy McGovern, and Charlie Comben. So I think when you've got those sort of 6 guys as the comparison point for Lobb's the last 5 weeks of Lobb's career where he's been playing that key defensive role, yeah, you'd take that a few of the Dogs. I think if you told me halfway through the year that the Dogs could pick up one of those guys in the mid-season draft and put them next to Liam Jones down back, you'd probably be thinking how unfair that'd be. So for the last 5 weeks, it has been a bit of bullshit from the Dogs. They've got this out of nowhere, and they've built themselves into the season perfectly with that move. I think that that's a credit to Bevo, and like I said, I was being critical of him at times, and not getting the best out of his list, but he's absolutely pulling the strings this year, and he's gotten the best out of his team with these moves so far. And for what hasn't been the perfect season for them, they've dealt with a bit of a few injuries and things like that. So to go through that adversity at times sort of has helped them with, especially that Lobb move, just being able to just pull him out of nowhere. And he was playing VFL for the majority of the year before that, so until the Norton injury as well. So he's just out of form. Chuck him back, and he's providing pretty good returns so far. So you can't argue with those sort of moves that Bevo's made. And then finally as well, just on the Dogs, they have consistency in the lineup now as well. You've got Norton's back from his injury, Waitman's back from his injury, Jones missed a little bit of time there, and obviously Darcy with his suspensions as well. So they've had an interrupted sort of list to this, in terms of health this year. I think that along with every team, but that they've managed it pretty well, and now they're sitting 8th and in the finals race, very very much so. But specifically, they've got a very, very promising spine. You've got obviously Lobb and Jones down back, Timmy English in the middle, Aaron Norton, Darcy, who can pinch it as a second ruck, and then obviously you've got Jamari Ugle-Hagan. So I think if this Rory Lobb run is real, where at the moment I just looked up before as well that he's averaging 4 intercept marks over the last 5 weeks since he's been a full-time backman, then if that Lobb run is as real as it's looking, then I don't think any other team probably in the AFL has a better spine overall at each position. So you've got Cody Waitman back in the team as well now in the back half of the year, well, not back half of the year, the last few games. And over the course of the year, I looked up what the team was with him in the lineup, and they're 8-3 with him in the lineup this year. So removing that game that he got subbed out pretty early on. He only played 22% time on ground against Freo in the game that he got injured and subbed out in. It's obviously not all due to Cody Waitman, that run in 8-3 or that he's played in this year, but you can't argue sort of the impact that he does have on the Doggies, and he provides them with that bit of spark up forward. And I do like watching Cody Waitman quite a bit. And then you're combining their spine, Cody Waitman being back in the team, and then that's before we've even started to talk about that midfield that's coming together really nicely. Obviously you got Bonampally, who in my opinion is probably the best player in the league right now. Adam Treloar having just as good a season as Bond is, if not, could nab a few votes off him in the Brownlow, unfortunately. You got Ed Richards, that move into the middle has been great. And then obviously Libba, who probably hasn't been in his absolute peak form, but Libba's going to show up each week. So all those guys in the midfield combined with that spine, and a few of the nice guys I have up forward with Waitman, and I quite like Garcia as well for them. So they're a genuine chance, and they're primed to repeat 2016 at this rate if they sneak into the finals or the bottom half of the 8. And ironically enough, it could be against Sydney as well if Sydney can pull their shit together a little bit. But I think obviously a few rounds to play. Let's see where they can take it. But yeah, their ceiling for this year is absolutely there. It just depends how much some of those unknown quantities hold up a bit. Whether that, like I spoke about, whether that Rory Lobb sort of recent run of form is real, whether Sam Darcy is actually going to stand up in finals, and the same for Jamari Ulehagen, I guess, are the two that I'd probably question up forward. I think that Norton's going to fly at everything, and what he brings week to week, and Waitman's going to be the same. But yeah, whether those, and then the midfield group's pretty solid as well. So I think that, as I said, it sort of hinges a little bit on their keys, which, as I said, I gave a glowing review to before, but yeah, it's the very, very promising spine, and probably one of the most talented spines I can remember being around the league for a few years. But yeah, it just depends how those guys sort of play in finals. I trust the rest of them quite a bit. With Bront leading them, it's pretty easy to fall in love with his team and see if they can make another run again. Yeah, I think that's probably about it on the doggies at the moment. But I'll move on to Adelaide. The Crows, watching them on the weekend was, a little concerning for them. I think that they came up against the Hawks, but it just felt like a bit of an end of Tex's era in Adelaide. I think that it was pretty apparent that there isn't enough room in the forward line for all the guys that they ended up playing. They were all tall, they played a lot of talls in that game. They had, Tex Walker himself, Elliot Himmelberg and Riley Thilthorpe and Darcy Fogarty, all four of them played. Himmelberg did end up getting subbed out, but like I said, having all those four to start the game sort of set up the issues for them throughout the game. I can't remember a time, the last time a team played a forward line this big, and not necessarily even just tall, but this immobile. Tex is however old he is, 34, 35 now. Himmelberg is right on to Himmelberg and Thilthorpe are just giant men, 2 meters tall. They're not putting any forward pressure on. And the same with Darcy Fogarty. He's good players all in their own right. But yeah, to have all four of them in the forward line was a bit of a questionable call. I think as a concept, it just sort of doesn't match up with what AFL teams are doing at the moment. And you need to be able to pressure in the modern AFL and put pressure on specifically in your forward half. So I think that if you have 4 talls, you're just not going to be able to do that, and you're asking a lot of your mids then to be able to provide pressure so your backs don't get completely cut up. And I think that the way that game played out, it wouldn't just be Hawthorn. Other teams would see that if they played those 4 talls, and they'd just, every team would sort of walk the ball out of the defensive 50 against them. So I think that, most teams will have 2 key forwards at most, and then sort of that utility style forward or resting ruck. So I don't think many teams are going with that big 4 up forward anymore. And yeah, I think that I will give them just a slight pass if their thinking was they were trying to outside Hawthorn's back 6 potentially, but it feels like they're trying to squeeze them all into that team. I think Hawthorn's back 6 is quite small, so maybe that's the advantage they were trying to take. But I just think that theory of playing that many tall guys is probably 10, 15 years old, where teams might play 2 genuine key forwards, a resting ruck, and then another third key forward of some sort. So I think that that they need to have a look at that. I'll touch on that a little bit more in a second. But the other issue for them is what the hell has happened to our guy Josh Rachelle. That just feels like when you watch him that there's just no confidence in his game at the moment. I had a quick look at his stats, and comparing them year on year over his first 3, they haven't really improved at all since his first year. Not significantly anyway. His first year was full of exciting moments, and the flashes of his potential were all there. But you want to see some progression, and fair enough that everyone was excited, but for him after that first year. But if it's your first year, and you haven't started to improve since then, you start to worry about his long-term development a little bit. And I think whether he could be a good second draft player for another club, not this off season, but yeah, by second draft I mean like if another team sort of takes a punt on him, if Adelaide is sort of want to cash out of the Josh Rachelle sweepstakes at this point. But yeah, I think like that's something they should probably consider if the lack of development sort of continues into his fourth year or after his fourth year. So I will say that development isn't linear, so all guys will develop at different rates. But by the end of year 4, we should have a pretty clear idea of whether this guy is going to be whether he's going to be the guy for Adelaide or one of the guys for Adelaide. Whether he's going to be able to be Rankin's running mate, because like in theory you have him and Rankin both being able to play and impact forward and midfield, and those players, as I sort of talked a little bit last week with Brisbane's blend of those sort of players, has become really important in footy, and those high half forwards who can have touches throughout the midfield and still impact the scoreboard and have a lot of like score involvements and things like that. That's the sort of players you want. But like, if just touching on those stats from Rachelle, his first year compared to this year, like he's averaging the same amount of goals, he's averaging 3 more possessions this year. He's averaging half a mark more. He's averaging the same amount of tackles, pretty much, same amount of clearances, 1.2 a game, a couple more kicks, and handballs. I think that his the marking as well as up forward. He's only getting another half a mark a game since his first year, and like that sort of like shows that he's not really putting himself in any better positions than he was at that point in time, which I don't know whether it's his fault or not, but I think that his marks inside 50 have actually gone down since his first year as well. So I think that there's a few things that are pointing in not the best direction for Josh at the moment. I think his shots on goal are actually down as well, but it's just his accuracy is up. So I think that it's one to watch going into next year. It'll be a pretty interesting storyline for Adelaide, I think, where his trajectory sort of falls. But I think like now that their season, I believe, is mathematically over, it's more about like the pathway for them to bounce back last year after a pretty disappointing year. Everyone sort of thought that they were going to be that team this year and that would take a jump, but it hasn't been the case. And obviously the pathway for them bouncing back is probably Josh Rachelle finding his form. They've invested that pick in him. They need that one to work out. Rankin being healthy as well obviously is a big one. He's been amazing this year when he has played, and for him to continue sort of blending that forward mid role and impacting him and being able to impact where they need him most from game to game, because he's that sort of player where he can be impactful in the midfield or up forward. So just depending on what the team needs, I think that you want Jake Saligo to keep up his work and build off this year, and hopefully add another gun mid or someone who target someone from another club who they think might be a bit underrated, and bolster that sort of midfield group, because right now Dawson Saligo sort of running alone. I'm not the biggest Rory Laird fan, so I think that if you add someone to Dawson Saligo, you have Rankin run through there, and whoever that player they might add through the middle, that would be a pretty important piece for them. I think that in addition to figuring out the forward structure, what I just talked about, I think whether they do let Tex go, I think probably leans towards that, and just sort of sticking with Darcy Fogarty, who for me is one of the best shots on goal that I've seen in quite a while. I was talking to one of my mates the other day about it. We probably he made the claim that ever, but I'm not sure about that. But he's very very good set shot on goal for a key forward, and just sticking with him and Riley Thorpe up forward, I think will just give them some more consistency and like make that full transition from the Tex era to those two, and give them the reins a little bit more. Getting some more letting the pressure sort of craft forwards like Ben Keys and Lockie Murphy and things like that be able to play off those big fellas a bit more and give them a bit more of a leash up forward, I think would be a good idea. And I do like their defense. Like they have a few big boys with Keane and Butts down there, and obviously you got Michael Lenny and Mitch Hinge as well, who are those sort of lockdown rebounders that every team needs. So I think that they've got the makings of a good team. They just need to figure out that forward structure a little bit, and see what they've got in Rachelle and whether that's going to be a pain point for them going forward or not. But yeah, just on Michael Ennie and Mitch Hinge, they will not be secret stars this week. The inductees, I promised no more halfbackers, so don't worry. As much as I'll give them a shout out for being good, that sort of archetype that I've inducted Bodie Uland and Darcy Wilmot in. I won't be inducting those two this week. I will steer clear of those defenders. So yeah, I think that's sort of where I'm at with Adelaide. It wasn't great performance on the weekend, obviously, especially after the win against Essendon. But yeah, maybe that win against Essendon was a little bit of fool's gold as well. Looking at how the Bombers are playing at the moment, and yeah, at least the Crow fans weren't throwing scarves onto the field. So a little drive by for the Essendon fans. But come on, it's not probably not on after a loss to the Saints. I know it's the Saints, but just cool the Jets a little bit, Essendon fans, please. Moving on to the Carlton Footy Club, I think that it's probably time to ask, are the alarm bells ringing at the moment for Carlton? I think that they might be a little bit more unstable than we thought, and I think it definitely starts with their back six getting exposed at the moment. So the last couple of weeks, I watched their games in against North Melbourne and Port Adelaide, and in both games, the North Melbourne game was first, and something interesting I saw from them was them putting Charlie Comden up forward, in addition to their normal forwards with Larkey and Teakle, who they got in the mid-season draft, and Zerha as well. So you've got four sort of big bodies that you sort of putting the pressure on Carlton's back six to find, and then Port Adelaide did the same thing, which may have been a coincidence with the Harry Mackay going out, and probably so, but they also stretched them down there by putting a Salvarado Galea down back. So yeah, I think that putting size up against Carlton's back six has worked in the last couple of weeks. I know that they did win that North Melbourne game, but only by 20 points against a team that they should probably be beating quite comfortably. And then obviously the loss to Port Adelaide. So it's something to note. And I think it's sort of, highlights that there isn't as much help for Wiedering as there probably should be. And and I've talked of times on the podcast about him being a one-man defense, but that only goes so far. And I think that Michael Voss sort of put Lewis Young down back a bit too late against Port. He sort of made the move in the last quarter when you could sort of see the momentum shifting in that third quarter, and it's not a position that they're extremely deep at behind Wiedering. They play McGovern and Kemp quite a bit, who aren't necessarily key backs. They're sort of that mid-size and can sort of pinch hitters, key defenders, and but not quite in that category, I guess. And then you've got Lewis Young, who is big, but he's not consistently picked, and I think that's for a reason. That's no shade towards Lewis Young. It's just that the trade-off is that they use McGovern and Kemp over him as for the flexibility they give them around the ground, and being able to use the ball a bit better than Lewis Young, I guess. But maybe they look to shore up that position in the off-season somehow, but that's not going to help them before finals, especially if their stoppage game doesn't get going before then. So they have the ball users and line breakers, and I've touched on those guys a couple of weeks ago with Newman and Saad, but they need someone other than Jacob Wiedering to be able to intercept and bring the ball to ground in those contests for those guys to get it moving the other way, because that's a lot of the time where they're launching from is off the Newman and Saad, and that's when they look their best, when those guys are running with the ball and hitting up targets really cleanly through the middle. And I just don't know if I just worry a little bit that there's a bit too much on Wiedering at the moment down back. They tried Sam Durden against North Melbourne a couple of weeks ago, and that didn't look very good. They might be stuck there for a second, but I think in addition to the back six getting sort of exposed with that lack of second key defender, like the key positions in general are somewhat vulnerable up forward as well. So you saw Harry go out and Lewis Young come into that game, and he's not a natural forward or a great forward in that game. He didn't show anything really. He kicked a goal, but it was pretty rudimentary, I think. But I think that they. It showed how much they need the two of Harry and Charlie in that game to help link up their transition between the defensive 50 and the forward 50. So whether that's creating a contest up in the wing and to force another stoppage and let Cripps and Walsh go to work, or just clunking that contested mark on the wing and then turning and going. They were just unable to do so consistently against both North Melbourne, a little bit against North Melbourne the other week, but specifically against Port Adelaide as well with Harry out. So, when they did go through Charlie and he was up on the wing being that target, like further up the ground, they then had no targets up forward. So that the dual forward lineup works really well with their small forwards of Owies and Motlop now that he's back and stuff, and Elijah Hollands too. But when one's caught up on the wing and the other one's not on the ground, then they had nothing to go to up forward, and I guess they didn't really have a plan B in that regard. So I think that Mackay laid out was definitely exacerbated by Tom DeConey not being able to play as well. So normally they'd probably be just bring Pito in and play Tom DeConey out forward, but that's not really an option at the moment. And I think that just the last sort of 4 weeks have just raised the eyebrows a little bit about their reliance on their key position players, which are less. Yeah, you can't really find replacements for those guys as much as you can for smaller players. So the way they've built their team, credit to them, they built a great spine. I talked about that with the Western Bulldogs, but when you're that reliant on that spine, it sort of falls away very quickly if you get a couple injuries here and there. So I think it's definitely something to keep an eye on as they progress into finals. They sort of need to be 100% healthy in their key positions. I think that's what the last few weeks have shown. But, if they are healthy, I absolutely think they still have that premiership upside for this season, especially with the big crowds and playing at the G if they can sneak back into the top two for a home final. But I think that the other worry that I have surrounding Carlton is Sam Walsh's last 4 weeks have been a bit of a worry as well. They're 1-3 over that span, and they've only beaten North Melbourne. So no shade to North Melbourne, but if you're Carlton, that you shouldn't be just beating them by 20 or so points. I think you should be smashing them, and their form probably that 20-point win is probably exemplary of their form. So just touching on his stats for the last 4 weeks, we've had his highest disposal efficiency game was 63%. So that's not even kicking efficiency, that's just overall disposals. So for someone who has a pretty even blend of kicks and handballs to only hit 63%, that was his highest. Sorry, not even average. So I haven't got his average on here, but the 63% is not great from Sam Walsh. He's not the greatest goal kicker. He's not necessarily known for hitting the scoreboard, but he hasn't kicked a goal at all in those 4 weeks. He's only averaging 4.25 scoring involvements over that span as well, compared to the rest of the year where he averaged 8 scoring involvements. So you can sort of see those few stats there that his efficiency is, so you can see from those stats there that his efficiency and what he's generating for the team from his possessions is pretty mediocre by his standards at the moment. So hopefully he can bounce back, and hopefully for the Blues' sake and their supporters' sake, that you're getting a pretty healthy team coming into finals. And I know Tom DeConey is not going to be ready until the first final, so hopefully everyone comes in pretty decent shape, and Sam Walsh can find a bit of form in the last few weeks, because Paddy Cripps needs a bit of help at the moment. I think he's been amazing all year, and he's continued to be pretty influential, but he just needs his running mate to pick it back up again, and we all know what Sam Walsh is capable of. So hopefully for Carlton's sake that happens. Now I will move on to this week's Secret Star Society inductee, and this week's nomination is Ed Richards. So I said I was done with halfbackers who can use the ball and defend, so let me introduce you to one that has transitioned from that position and role into a midfielder. So it's sort of a loophole there, guys, but you're welcome. Just a bit on Ed. He's been amazing inside since he's moved there. Probably a very similar pathway to Hayden Young, the Freo midfielder now, if anyone's familiar with him and his trajectory. But, being moved from being a big half-backer to becoming an inside mid at the stoppages who can win contested ball and then, be able to use their skills on the spread is, pretty cool development for the doggies. And I think Ed in particular is a good blend of skills at his position, yeah, so I'll go through a few of the stats that sort of I'd like to highlight on Ed. So for context, these stats are relative to his position that he plays. So as a midfielder this year, and being described as elite is in the 1 to 11th percentile, and above average is from the 11th to the 35th percentile, and that's per AFL's own stats and benchmarking tools. So he's going at 64.2% by foot, which is an above average kicking efficiency. He's averaging 1 intercept markers, which is an elite for a midfielder. He's averaging 2.7 stoppage clearances, which is above average for a midfielder. He's averaging 3.5 intercept possessions as a mid, which is again above average, and he's averaging 2.6 rebound 50s, which is an elite for a midfielder. So from that profile, you can sort of start to see that his defensive work has carried over from playing down back. He's still rebounding from defense. He's leaning into that sort of background that he has, but while his mid skills, sort of like his stoppage work and kicking, is still above average, and it's only his first year in the position, so I'm very excited to sort of see what comes from him going forward, and for the doggies as well. And hopefully, I think that his game specifically will translate very well to finals footy, where it's a bit more contested, and he's another big body that the Dogs can throw in there. So yeah, look out whoever plays them come in the finals. I wouldn't want to be a opposition midfield coming up against him, Bont, Libba, and then Trawler on the spread as well. So yeah, I think that I will. Yeah, just another little bit of context for him. I ran his stats for this season to date, and found his comparisons from players that have a similar statistical profile, and those guys are Zach Heaney, Adam Chera, Jai Caldwell, Finn Callahan, Ed Richards himself, Ruben Gibney, and Caleb Sarong. So yeah, it's pretty good company that he's in there, and all those guys are sort of that big contested ball getters. Maybe not Sarong so much in terms of big, but yeah, they're all they all love the contest, and yeah, loving what Ed Richards has done so far. So that's why he's this week's inductee into the Secret Star Society. And before I sign off for the day, I will just clip the Melbourne crowd. Why are you only getting 16,000 fans 3 years after a premiership at the MCG on a Saturday night? I know the weather was pretty horrible. I didn't go. I'm not a Melbourne fan though, so can't blame me. But yeah, that's a pretty poor effort. I know it's against GWS, but guys, your team is like, you've got the heart and soul of your team playing with a broken leg at the moment. Like, I know that there's no Brayshaw or no Petrarca, so maybe the hope is lost for the season, but like, this team, you sort of want to enjoy those players while they're still there, because it could get pretty grim again in a few years for the Melbourne team. So I think especially when they're still in a hunt. They were still in the hunt for finals as well. They still are. Like, I don't really understand why they've abandoned the team. They've never been a great attendance team or membership team from what I understand. But like, that's just that's probably a new low. And everyone gives shit to North Melbourne here and there for not having the fans show up and things like that. But I feel like they're definitely a bit more passionate than the Melbourne fans pound for pound. So yeah, a little sign off clip, and maybe we'll make that a weekly segment as well, as the Secret Star Society will start clipping people as we sign off. So anyway, have a good weekend everyone, and enjoy the footy as always.